Okay, and we are live. So, hello everyone, a warm welcome. This is Phil from Cogent Integrated Business Solutions, and yes, we are here today for a Let Us Talk It Zipinar session. So, this is an initiative by Cogent uh, in terms of giving back to the community and impacting the world through free knowledge sharing. So, we invite seasoned professionals as guest speakers in order to share their mind into this free platform so anyone from any part of the world can benefit of this free knowledge sharing. Now, we invite you to join in wherever you are, even if it's just your work or free time. You can watch this broadcast on YouTube, Facebook, and you can join in Zoom to interact with our guest speaker. And today's session is there's an unprecedented event that took place. We will only be having one guest speaker instead of two, and but definitely this is worth listening about the topic because our guest speakers has made her effort in to be able to deliver such wonderful topic for today's session. So no, we only do this free Zipinar now only for once a month. Before we do it every Wednesday, but now we have to adjust these schedules and make sure that the information and the knowledge that we provide to you are at its best. Definitely. Now, for the first topic that, or the only topic that we'll be discussing today is about flatline to forward. So, decision defibrillation tool. So that's actually crossed my tongue now, but definitely it's not as complex as that when our guest speaker will be talking about it. So today, in a fast-moving organizations, decision paralysis rarely starts with a crisis. It starts quietly when uncertainty, overload, and competing priorities slow action to a crawl. So decision defibrillation is a practical and globally relevant session for individual contributors, project leaders, and advisors operating in high complexity environments who need to move work forward without perfect information or positional authority. And for this session, um our guest speaker will focus on recognizing the early warning signs of decision arrest and introduce one simple, repeatable tool participants can use immediately at all levels to restart stalled decisions and restore momentum. Now, our guest speaker is a founder of the Chaos Games Consulting and host of the Business Emergency Room podcast, and also a strategist, an angel investor, board member, speaker, and business triage expert, and a fractional transformation and strategic leader who specializes in turning chaos into clarity. And as the founder of the Chaos Games Consulting, our guest has worked with scaling companies, pivot teams, and executive leaders facing high stakes pressure. And without further ado, let me introduce to you Marche Van Kriken for our guest for today's Zipinar session. Hello, Marche. Thank you so much
Hi.
for joining us today. It's really a pleasure, and I would really love to hear the topic that you have brought to the table for today's session.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Pleasure is
Um,
ours.
Let me share my screen.
Yes.
Um, I've tried to maneuver things around a little bit to
Mhm.
give you a little extra. I'm not going to fill up the whole time. No worry. You're all going to get some of your time back, but I'll try to add some tidbits that I think might be of value to you. You might see in the slides that there's been some hasty last minute additions. Um, but that works, right? All right. So, yes. Um, I think the topic itself is very familiar to all of us, right? These meetings where there is subjects that just move from meeting to meeting, decisions that don't get made. Um, let's have another think about it. Let's talk about it at the next session. Let's gather some more information, all of that. And to me, I just really call that a decision flatline. Not making a decision is not good for business. And today I'm going to show you how to do your own CPR on these situations. And as alluded to in the introduction, I promise you that by the end of this presentation, you actually have a practical tool that you can use regardless of where you sit in the organization to walk back into the meeting next week where that topic is yet back again on the agenda and break open that conversation and restart that flat line. So you've heard a long and elaborate introduction. I wanted to briefly tell you about why I'm the one talking about decision defibrillation. And that's not so much about what I do today, it's about where I come from. So I did a couple of decades in frontier projects in oil and gas, where we're talking making decisions about never done before projects and scopes with untried and new technology, with teams that span from government and national oil companies to local contractors and local NGOs, etc., right? Complex collaborations, large groups of people, political risk, all of it. And within that space, decision quality and strategic risk management and decision making was my subject matter expertise. I've combined that with working in disaster relief, where you're doing decision making in emerging situations, right? So we're talking about decision making that needs to happen to keep people safe, to get people help, to get people out to recover. In a situation where you have maybe at best 20% of the information you need when you start, and it changes, and you're never going to get above 40, and emotions are running high. I feel comfortable in that space because I'm also a skipper or a sailor. So you see a picture of a yacht in a storm. To me, that is not a scary place to be. But in order for it not to be a scary place, you need to be comfortable to make decisions in that moment, right there and then. So today is about how do you take some of those decision-making skills, right, from these high-pressure, emerging situations into the business world? Because let's be honest, in today's business world, um, there is no such thing as certainty anymore, right? Decision making has always been hard, but in the current business climate, it's harder than ever. We are perpetually suffering from complete information overload. Whatever is true today is probably not true tomorrow. Many of us feel like that hamster in the middle, right? There is challenges being thrown at us, and in return, we throw more hours and harder work at it. But how do we get off the hamster wheel to fix the hamster wheel and keep it going at the same speed? Some of us might feel more like the lady in the purple suit, right? That we're thrown in the deep end and people are looking at us to make decisions where we're like, why me? I don't even feel anywhere remotely well placed to make this decision. I also show you a picture of a little yacht adrift because I think in decision paralysis, what typically happens is that we're not making a decision, and as a result, the forces that be are being deployed on us, right? And we drift off course, and we find ourselves in a situation that is even scarier, uh, and where it's even more like, what now? Where do I start? We all have been in these situations in the workplace where we kind of feel like we need help. We also don't know what help. We also don't know where to find the help. Or it feels like we've had the ad out for ages, right? Asking for help. And then people. The relationship we have with people and the way we work with people is changing. We have way more interactions and collaborations with people that we spend less time with and that we know less about, right? So the misalignment and the misunderstanding and the unclarity as to who should make the decision and who are all the people that should be at the table is bigger than ever. And this is a real problem. There is, if you look at a Fortune 500 company, each of them, at least what they can measure, is losing about 250 million a year from indecision, right? So from just moving stuff down the line. 85% of leaders say that they struggle in this space, yeah, and that they're postponing decisions or not making decisions. There is like ample statistics out there. But the reality is that as a human, we are not geared to make hard decisions. We are geared towards survival. So if I am pushing you to make a decision whilst you've been programmed that what you need to do is stay safe, and if you make the wrong decision, you might get killed or get eaten, huh? Or not eat tomorrow. Then what we are used to is not making a decision and staying where we're at or not sticking our head out above the cornfield, as they say in the Netherlands. So yes, this is a very common challenge. You're not alone. Um, and although you experience like this, the reason I came up with this tool and the reason I'm here to talk to you about this today, because what I'm seeing is this. If in business there is no decisions being made, basically you have no circulation. If a business is a body, if a business would be a human, I'm telling you that the lack of decision making to me leads to cardiac arrest in your business. Decision making facilitates everything. Without decision making, there is no delegation. Without decision making, there is no empowerment of your people. Without decision making, there is no focus on value and what constitutes sustainable, replicable results. Without decision making, there is no action. The challenge is that beyond that, it's really hard. um, as humans are also just really not very well equipped to make decisions. There is a whole raft of things that happen in our brain beyond the survival instinct that make us make bad decisions, wrong decisions, or no decisions. And I want you to be aware of those because then you can recognize them, but also because that means that I think you'll understand better why the tool is helpful. Because there is a lot of noise going on in your head when it comes to decision making. So let's assume you actually do know what decision needs to be made, and you're trying to make that decision, or you're making decision. Making decisions. The reason why you get hurt, right, or why you feel like you've made the wrong decision in the past, making you hesitant to make a decision now, is that there is over 170 biases. I'm showing you 7 here. There's over 170 biases that come into this. And you might say, well, AI. The good news is humans are actually still better at decision making than
Yeah.
artificial intelligence. But yeah, we're flawed in this, and particularly in the biases space, AI actually can be of use. So some of the biases that play a role in this is confirmation bias. So for instance, if you maybe need a new car, and you really don't need a new car till 6 months down the road, but you really found one that you really like now, and it felt, so then you did it, right? You made the decision. What then happens is that you'll find yourself in the month after you bought the car or the 3 months after you bought the car, you're going to tell your friends, well, it was a really good deal, or I ran into it, right? Or it was going to happen anyway, and I had this little windfall. And so basically, once we make a decision, our brain is geared to telling ourselves that we made the right decision, right? So that's tainted. We are how we remember how we made the decision and why it was a good decision. Once we made the decision, half the time we think it's a lot better than it really was in the moment. We also have extreme loss aversion. So basically, any sunk cost or any money already spent seems to be 3 times as much worth to us than any money we're yet to spend. So that's why it's so hard if you go down a wrong course to actually say, oops, this didn't work. We need to, cancel and recoup. We also have a gambler's fallacy, right? We keep on buying lottery tickets. We know the odds. The odds are awful. And somehow we think, but if only. We do that in decision
Uh-huh.
making also, right? Where it's like,
Yes.
yeah, but it could really turn out amazing. And if it does, we're set for life. There's also the availability cascade, or maybe we should just call this these days the algorithm, right? What you're looking for, the information you're trying to find, unfortunately, even before algorithms, if you are kind of like, hey, how about this, or how about this, or I'm reading somewhere an article about this that piqued my interest. Now, somewhere in my brain, that subject sits there and it's now on my radar. And so I will see it and recognize it when the same subject or the same opinion starts to pop up somewhere, and I will hear more of the same, and I will be more closed off to picking up a new subject or something different. And of course, algorithms do help you go down that rabbit hole way faster and way more than anybody needs. And maybe some of you are familiar with that statement with whomever shouts loudest is not always right. But unfortunately, we do hear whatever is shouted out loudest or most frequent much more than anything else, right? And
Mhm.
so, yeah, you could see how that totally taints how we make decisions. There's also such a thing as a framing effect that plays a role in decision making. We struggle sometimes to define the decision we're trying to make, or we think that between a team and work or in business, we're making the same decision, but we have a different frame around that decision. So one person might be thinking that you're trying to solve world hunger, and the other person might be thinking that you're actually trying to agree what's on the menu tomorrow, right? And that's a very extreme example. Um, or you're in the space where you're like, okay, I don't know how to solve world hunger, so I'm going to go back to what am I eating tomorrow? That might not be helpful either, right? What is the right scale of the decision? Because the challenge is these decisions are hard because there's interdependencies. And carving out the decision to too small a space and too small a decision, ignoring all the interdependencies that come with it, is not helpful. But trying to solve world hunger in one decision is impossible, right? And of course leads to paralysis. But you see also a lot of miscommunication in this space. Then there is the bandwagon effect, which definitely in business is a thing. So imagine, and I've added some information around decision making and decision quality in general in at the end as an extra. But in this decision making is about choosing between alternatives, right? And we talked about feeling safe. And so feeling safe means that the status quo, which is always an option, right, is one that we like because we know it. We feel safe there. And although we know all its warts and flaws, it typically feels like the safest thing to choose. The next safest thing to choose is whatever the competitor doing or whatever somebody else is doing who we believe is slightly further down the line, or is it or who we admire, or who appears to be performing well, right? So we like an option that somebody else has already chosen. Because in our heads, it already feels somewhat successful or proven or tested, but it might not fit us at all. But we're genetically, we are safer in groups. We believe in other people. We believe in the strength of success. And we believe that somebody else's success is replicable to us if we do the same or if we follow their footsteps.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, our business might not be the same, and hence that's of course not really true. Um, and then the Dunning-Kruger effect, I don't like that name at all, but this comes back to, let's stick with the cars and the driving examples. If you ask an average group of people what kind of driver they are or who in the room believes that they're an above average driver, you will find that at least two-thirds, if not more than 80% of people in the room will tell you that they feel that they're an above average driver. Well, I don't know how, you don't need to be really good. I was awful at statistics. You don't need to be very good at statistics to understand that statistically it's not possible that 80% of the world's drivers are above average drivers. We somehow, even those of us who don't come across as braggers at all, we somehow all have an innate feeling that there is a lot that we do and that we do every day, that we feel that we're better, potentially better at it that we are, or that we're above average at it and that we don't need help. Um, and I think we recognize that example, right? If you talk about some of the stuff that gets labeled as common sense in business, right? How to talk to people, we all know from any leadership training that we're all actually pretty piss poor at communications. And yet that feels offensive, right? To say to
Mhm.
yourself, because you're like, hey, I'm not an awful communicator. I have friends.
Mhm.
I have some half decent jokes. Um, but be having some social skills and functioning in the world and being a really good effective leadership communicator and communicating in a way that propels your business to success are not the same thing, right? So you could see how these businesses or how these biases play a huge role in decision making and also lead to decisions not being made and decisions being stuck, particularly those decisions that need to be made in a collective, in an integrated setting. I wanted to show you an example from the wild, taking it back to decision paralysis. And I might be dating myself here enormously. I'm, of course, a woman, so I'm in my, I don't know how many decades of 37. Um, I couldn't actually find a good screenshot of a more updated version. But let's say this is what you're seeing, right? You're running an update of some sorts. And you have this screen in front of you that says the update is 100% complete. That could be really good until I'm telling you that you've been staring at this screen for 37 minutes. Then this is not good, right? But then it's also like, what do I do with this? Because we all have been there. We've all been there where it's like, oh, I need to run this update. There's never a good time. I don't want to do it. This is really impractical. All right, then, I guess so. I'll go get a coffee and let it run. And then it said this. Now what? Because you don't know if somewhere in the next 30 seconds it's going to go to whatever comes after this, which is Valhalla, which says, I'm done, we're ready, you can go back to work. Or is this now it? And is it just going to hang on this for another 24, 48, or however how many hours? We all have been in this situation where you look at this and you're like, what now? We all feel as if we're nearly there here. But the truth is, this is decision paralysis. And what you have is absolutely nothing. You have nothing. You have a screen that's stuck. You don't know what's coming after, and you need to make a decision. Uh, oop, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. So that's where the decision defibrillator comes in. And I've based this tool very much on the decision defibrillators that you find in any random office, restaurant, hotel, whatever. We've all seen these big boxes hanging on the walls. Um, they're pretty simple. The whole idea behind this tool is yes, that if your business is in total chaos and this is a structural problem, right? And you're hanging on by a thread, come and see me or any other consultant or external help who can start pulling you out. But if decision paralysis happens, it happens to all of us, right, on a day-to-day basis. This is a self-help tool that anybody can deploy at any level in the organization, and you can deploy it on yourself, on your own single decision making, or you can deploy it in the business context, right? So I am going to invoke a bit the pictures of the emergency room because I'm kind of assuming that all of you at some point at least have seen some movies or TV series with an ER. And so those pictures are a bit more front of mind. Um, what the AED really is about is restarting that circulation, right? Restarting that rhythm in the heart that gets the circulation pumping again. So we start with the shock. We start with this attaching of the paddles and pushing the button. What you see in that ER setting is that the patient's lying on the table, everybody's standing around it, everybody's focused and looking at that patient. The paddles go on and everybody steps back, right? That's exactly what I want you to do. What I want you to do, even if you're doing this for just you, right? I want you to talk to yourself. What I want you to do is call it out and say, listen, we've had this decision on the agenda for 13 months now. It's enough. We are today making this decision, or what does it take to make this decision today?
Mhm.
Yeah, this is the decision, and this is why now. And why now can be very much, we can carry it forward another 13 months. We're not going to get more or better insight or better data. Why now is also can also very well be we've already sunk so much cost by not doing it, yeah, that it's enough. Um, and if there is no why now, then why is that decision still on the agenda? Then it shouldn't be there in the first place, right? So this is assuming that there's a decision there that needs to be taken. I want you to say it out loud because what that does, it put all the faces of the people in the room onto saying, okay, I'm going to look at this issue, at this problem. I'm going to, for now, shut down the other stuff and focus on that question, this decision. We need to make this decision. Then we've shocked the decision. We go to value, or I also sometimes call it the numbers. If you look at the emergency room scenes, you see that heart rate monitor, right? And they put the paddles down and then they shock. And then they're all looking at the screen. They're looking at the values. They're looking at the numbers. They're waiting for this pulse. They're not just waiting for any pulse. They're waiting for a pulse that goes above certain values. They're reading off other things on that screen. The second step in decision defibrillation I want you to make is I want you to figure out what those values need to be. What, if I make this decision, what does success look like? How will I know that I've made the decision? What is this decision achieving for me? And I want you to give me one or two things, right? So what's that heart rate number that it needs to be? What's the rhythm or the frequency that I need to achieve? Is it money? Is it time? Is it value? Is it um, uptime? Whatever it is, what is that value? I also want you to define one or two, not 17. I want you to define one or two must-haves. What's the bare minimum that it needs to do, or where does it need to fit within, right? If those oxygen level, if the rhythm is there, but the oxygen levels are not, that patient may be brain dead and still declared dead, right? So I need to know what the minimum criteria are too that are going to make or break this decision. And I don't want 700 things. That screen is pretty small. I want you to have that discussion with everything that you have already debated for months or weeks in your head or with that team about this subject. If you actually go sit around the table and take the time to have that discussion, you can come up with what these values are based on the what you know today. If I have to make this decision today, what values would I be looking for on that screen? Which takes us then to rhythm. And rhythm is action. It's saying, okay, we've shocked it. How what is now the decision we would make that puts us in those values, right? That would get us into the right values onto that screen. And if we really don't have an option there, we need to go back and introduce something else and say, well, actually, then there's a different decision to make because we've been looking at these three alternatives, and none of these do the trick. So does that mean there's a whole different decision that needs to be made here? More than likely, in having that conversation about how do we pick a solution today that would fit us, get us into that value screen, you actually know what your next steps are. And what I want you to do is say, this is the action we're going to take. I want you to assign these actions to a person And these actions have a deadline, and that deadline is short and near. And that deadline could be an intermediate deadline saying we want to see that first step implemented, or these first numbers up on, or these first results, or the first feedback, or we want to go to a, you know, progress update on implementation by this date.
Mhm.
So the reason I'm saying anybody can deploy this at any level is that you or anybody else can be the intervention person, right? And say, hey, we've been looking at this challenge for weeks. We're not
Yeah.
making progress. This is the money that we're wasting by not doing this, or this is the downside from not making a decision here. We can all speak out, because then somebody might say, well, who are you? Who are you, or why are you bringing this up? And then you can say, actually, I know a simple tool for us. If we can take an hour and go through this conversation, we might not be in, in a large group or a complex decision completely, close out the loop. But in an hour, we can have a very valuable conversation to create some clarity about, if we would need to make this decision today, what would we do and how would we do it and what would we decide? And we might actually find that that's good enough for now. Um, so shock is about calling it. Value is about the value focus. What does good look like? And rhythm is about the action.
Mhm.
I wanted to elaborate briefly a little bit on the sustainable decision-making hygiene. This is more a take home. I do loads of work in this space, because if you look at decision-making in disaster action response, right, the way that a FEMA or a UN disaster action or a Red Cross does decision-making in this disaster management space, um, it's very the basics of decision making are very similar as to what I'm showing you here. They have a lot more pre-definition around it. The example I'm showing you here is more business geared, and I just added this slide last minute. What I should say with this is that this is the Stanford University decision quality model. There is ample decision quality models out there. Um, I don't care so much about which ones you use, but in general, if you want to do some work on decision making or you want to improve your decision making, my challenge to you is look these things up. I use them in my personal life and I use them in business, and I've used them on billion-dollar projects, right? The framework is very simple. And what's so nice about it is that these biases and the things that we find hard about decision making, basically look at it as a pre-made spreadsheet, right? That you're forcing your brain, or pre-made questionnaire that you're forcing your brain to populate. All these decision models, if you can find one pagers for them or frameworks for them, and they're out there everywhere, and if you reach out to me, I'm also happy to share with you. Basically, it's forcing you, either in discussion together with others or out of your head onto paper, to fill out these steps and this logic of these decision making models, forcing you to then see where there is gaps in that decision making process, and giving you then concrete pointers of what more work you might need to do to get to a decision. So very quickly, the Stanford decision making model has much the same as many others. It's shown always as a chain, because it says, well, it's as good as the weakest link. You can totally make any of these models fit for purpose. Yeah. The start is the appropriate frame. I never have understood why it's sit all the way in this corner. But the appropriate frame is very much about, okay, what is the decision we're trying to make here? Are we at least on the same page as to what we're trying to decide? And is that not world hunger? And is it also not just one next bite, right? Where does that sit? Then you need some alternatives. Status quo can always be an alternative. If you really are generating alternatives from scratch because you haven't, or you're not already evaluating a bunch of stuff, I always talk about collectively exhaustive and mutually exclusive. Pick a few scenarios. Um, And you might through the work end up with a solution that's kind of a hybrid between the two. It's always easier if you have, you know, three or four discrete options to evaluate that you can define and build up. If you are forever changing what you're evaluating and saying, oh, I'm now changing this one to that, then you're not getting, that's not really helping in your thinking, right? So put a few alternatives on the table, including a far out one and the one that's today, and work those. Feed it with meaningful and reliable info, not more info, information that de-risk them, that define them, that quantify the uncertainty or the opportunity around them. What are the sources of the information? How reliable is it? And be careful of a lot of confirming information on the same subject, right? Then we go back to the values. What is value in your business or value to you, right? Isn't in regards to this decision, is it timing over money or timing balanced with at least under this budget? Where does it sit? And it cannot be all important. You do really need to know, saying, okay, timing is key, provided it's over this amount of money or under this amount of money, right? You can have a solution box, but it cannot be 700 things that it all needs to adhere to. And then talk somebody through your logic. That's the sound reasoning, right? That's where the biases come in again. I'm used to taking these huge decisions that go to decision panels for exactly this reason. There is all these subject matter experts who sit at a table and say, "Hey, I'm missing something in this logic, or you've forgotten about this angle or this link into here, or I'm not a subject matter on this stuff, and you're talking me through, but I'm hearing you talk about both pink and light blue as if they're the same thing. Explain me, right?" You can do that with a friend, with somebody. Talk somebody through your logic because you are biased, and if you talk yourself through your own logic, it's going to be flawed. And what magically happens is if you do this and this is mature and right, it's actually always very clear what the decision is and immediately what the action is. And if it's not, if there's no clarity on what the action is, what action the decision leads to, somewhere in here there is something not properly shaped up. And so you just go through it again, right? What happens in decision-making structures in disaster management or in big business is that the roles are very well defined. So who sits in these decision panels, who makes decisions, who can override decisions, who brings the stuff forward, who needs to have had eyes on certain decisions, etc. It's very important that you document your thinking and your logic, because what happens is that you start working the decision and you get progressive insight and more information that shouldn't lead to a completely different decision, but it may lead to course correction. And if you remember why you said really dark, dark blue, and now something changes, like, oh, if that changed, we always said we would go through 3 shades lighter of blue. That's helpful, right? That makes you fast, that makes you resilient. So you want to just document the logic that you had. It's also important that you document the logic that you had because you have people in your business who might disagree with your decision. But if you showcase to your team and your people that there was time and effort put into things and that the logic stands, they might go like, okay, I didn't see that coming and I don't love it, but I understand why this decision is made and I can buy into it. Yeah. And I can follow you. And yes, all of this can totally be AI enabled. Yeah. You can run scenarios, you can get more information and data, but you want to check, you want to make sure the logic stands. Yeah. And you want humans to make the actual final decision. Um, in the interest of time, I'm not going to talk much more about this, but yeah, I run a podcast called The Business Emergency Room. My business is doing business triage, and I think the body is an excellent metaphor for your business. So if you're interested in some of the other thinking behind that, please tune in. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Um, and yeah, I'd love to connect with you if you want some more information on decision-making tools. If you're looking for some examples, I'm here. I want to know what's useful for you. Um, I want more innovations and more businesses to succeed. I think we need more solutions than ever for the myriad of crazy problems we have. And I see too many businesses fail, not because what they do or the services they provide or the technology they have or the product they have is not useful. All of them are much needed. Too many businesses get stranded in the running the business part of things.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm here for.
Yes.
So thank you.
And yes, definitely there's much information on this topic than what was shared right here. So it's definitely advisable to connect with Marche, uh, like on LinkedIn or follow her podcast. You should be able to like communicate and schedule like maybe an introductory meeting with her to talk more about this because decision making is very crucial. It may be a small scale or large scale. It uh, it all depends on like the go signal of whatever move you're gonna do next. So it's like a very great opportunity to have one of the let's say mentors in terms of having decision making or emergency uh, to in order for your businesses to survive or thrive further. Yes, Andy, thank you. And yeah, thank you for putting the chat there. All right, so we're open for questions, definitely, to Margie. So anyone who's interested to put their questions in, you can do so. Put it on the chat if you can open your mic. Yes, please do. Okay. So from Hussein, how can individual contributors move decisions forward when they don't have authority or the final say?
Yes, that's a great question, Hussein, and I think very relevant. I think there is much more we can do, and it's on many different fronts. First of all, I think very few people spend any effort in quantifying sunk cost, but it's actually one of the easiest things to do typically, right? So, for instance, if we talk about data migration, it's one of these things that gets stalled all the time, right? It's like we need to migrate, but when do we migrate and which systems? And it's like it's the slowest moving decision ever. Um, if you actually start to highlight, right, from your position, right, from where you work or where you sit, saying, okay, I get it that this is a difficult decision and it's not being made, but we are updating these systems or these things. And if there is no move on this data migration, what we're doing is effectively gonna have to sync up to the old system, right? And we're adding to the challenge, or it's the there is probably a business case made why the whole conversation about data migration came about, right? Which has numbers in it, which should be available, which say, hey, the whole value improvement from doing this was this. And so by then not realizing that value, so there is typically something possible in initiating conversation saying, hey, this is difficult, but we're losing this money. There is also something about that people seem to forget, but that seems to lead to aha moments, is kind of saying, okay, tell me then what piece of information that we don't have today, right? If we get that, would make this decision easier. And the answer is often nothing, or I don't know, or it's a piece of information that you're never going to get. And it seems to people seem to need to get that question, right? It's kind of like, well, I'm not going to get progressive insight. Operations are not suddenly going to have a lull 3 weeks down the line or 3 months down the line, making this the easiest thing to implement or whatever, right? There is not a good time for this. We're not going to get better information, just different information. We're not going to get more clarity, more surety. So what are we waiting for? Sometimes that needs pointing out.
Mhm.
So asking questions about, okay, and that goes back to those decision-making tools, speaking from that space. If you are individually trying to get a decision make that affects your work that doesn't seem to be on people's radar or that doesn't seem to be made, again, you can go back and look at the decision making tool and look at the way that you're presenting the decision to be made to the decision maker, because you might need to put more work around that and put it forward in a way that they are following your whole logic, not in infinite detail, but they can see the work you put in. You talk about the trade-off. You say, this is what I looked at, this is what I looked at, and all on this basis, this to me looks the most sensible thing to do. And you can present that in smarter ways following some of this decision logic, meaning that you can kind of push your boss or your leader to actually make a decision that you need making, right? And last but not least, I think decisions are perpetually made at way too high a level in the organization. There's also a thing to be said for actually asking, saying, I'm not getting steer or clarity on this. Can I make the decision? It's interesting. It's an interesting thing to test. I've seen in lots of situations where people kind of, where leaders then kind of instinctively almost want to go like, no, but then start thinking about it and go like, actually, yes, because I don't want to make a decision about it because I don't know enough about it and it's in your realm and it's in your space. You do it. Or at least you decide something and talk me through it in 10 minutes. But then I'm kind of okay with it, right?
Yeah.
So maybe this is an opportunity to pull a decision your way.
That's also like some sort of a struggle, because like if you're not in good terms to the ones who's got the final say, it's gonna be an opposition. So
Yeah, but we so it's very intriguing, but we feel that we need to make more decisions sometimes than we do. Yeah. And so particularly in business, people bring things to us, and because they bring things to us, we think as a leader that we need to make that decision, whilst the person is bringing it to us brings it to us because they're not sure if they're allowed to make decision because simply the hierarchy is not clear.
yeah.
And nobody talks about where should this decision sit. Everybody just works off assumptions. Whilst if you actually open up that conversation and say, hey, I brought it to you, but it didn't seem to go somewhere. Maybe I can make it, and you don't have to spell it out that way. You can have that conversation in a different way. But you
Mm.
can open up the conversation about at what level some of these decisions need to be made. And sometimes that's very helpful to actually getting decisions moving through the system.
True.
Yeah.
All right. I hope that takes care of the question. Thank you, Shane. That's actually open an intriguing part of how the decisions are made, because there's always delay, right? When you are waiting for that one person who has the final say. So,
Yeah.
like you have this one figured out, but you'll be have you're gonna have the trouble to
Yeah.
deliver it some sort.
Yeah, there's also the other type of decision where something truly unexpected happens, right? Or where you're with a group of peers and it's not necessarily a hierarchy thing.
Mhm.
And something happens, and then everybody's kind of standing around looking at each other as to who's deciding, right? It's like as if you're going, you've had a work meeting offsite somewhere, and then you leave the place, and then it's actually, shall we go for dinner? And people are like, yeah, but then it's also like, where do we go? And then everybody looks at each other, kind of like, who's going to propose something, and that typically some leads to kind of the same people taking charge. But if the subject is a bit more convoluted than that, you have that in the work situation too, where there's something suddenly something coming up and then everybody's like, oh, this doesn't really sit with anybody, right? This is not any, nobody owns this. I call those situations the situations where in the land of the blind, one eye is king. um I think you should consider just taking it, right? Because then it's like, okay, you look around. If everybody keeps looking around, that's not helpful. So at some point, it's like, okay, I'll step in. And all you really need to do is say, okay, what do we need here, right? Oh, this failed, or we lost this supplier, or we lost. Okay, how are we going to get a replacement? Somebody needs to state the problem. And the miracle thing is that if somebody says out loud, okay, I think this is what we need to solve, I also don't know all the answers, but I think this is what we need to solve. Then people start to contribute. Then they're suddenly like, oh, yeah, I can maybe do this, or I can maybe do that, and then you might end up being the leader of that problem, but you're immediately inviting others in to contribute, right? So sometimes all it takes to get decision making moving is somebody to actually declare out loud what the problem is that we're solving in a way that invites others to start contributing.
Yes, because if you're gonna only just provide a solution, you'll have to bear the responsibility for that solution you brought up. So
Yeah.
you have to get the
Yeah.
contributors to share their
Well,
insights as well.
yeah, and that's okay, right? I mean, somebody's got to do it. And
Yes. Yeah, the fear of bearing the responsibility sometimes puts the delay. So
yeah, yeah. But ultimately, in business, time is money, and doing nothing just puts you adrift, right? If you don't decide something, the world will decide for you.
true.
And it's unlikely that it will give you the winning lottery ticket for free.
Well, yes, I agree. All right. So, any other questions from our attendees? Feel free to put it in. We have still enough time. So, we were not sure that we were able to cover the full hour, but definitely here we are.
Hey, it's my
We have,
favorite subject. What can I say?
yes. All right. So, thank you as well, Sing. So we don't have any questions on online platforms. And now, for those who are watching online, thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely with this wonderful topic that we have. And if in case you've missed this session, the live session, this recorded session will be uploaded on YouTube and on Facebook as well. So you can watch it later. And any questions in mind, you can put it on comments or in the chat section. And yeah, we can still put it up to be or for our guest speaker to answer those questions. So we can still get back to you. All right. So any inputs, questions are very welcome. And also flashed here is the QR code for the feedback to Marchi.
Yes.
So
Do you want me to put it back up?
yeah, just for the recording.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here we go. I'd
yes,
love
that's
any
perfect.
feedback in any way, shape you want to provide it. I'd love to hear from you, either on LinkedIn or here or through email or on any of the podcast channels, whatever works for you.
Right, and make sure to send a connection invite on LinkedIn. So it's a
Yes.
good network, definitely, to have Margie in your connections. And yeah, who knows? For those who are young entrepreneurs or startups right now, that you'll be in a position where you have to create or like put your decision making into test, and you're struggling to do that. So here's the best person to ask help to. So schedule a meeting, an introductory meeting or whatnot. So send her a message, and definitely it's a great help. So you're helping each and everyone. You are helping yourself, your business, and you're also helping Margie. All
Yes.
right. Okay. I think that takes care of everything. So thank you so much, Margie, for this
Thank
wonderful
you.
session, and I love the topic. Definitely, it's very timely. It will never be out of date, and yes, it's always crucial. All right.
So, thank you for
Okay.
having me.
All right, so it's a pleasure for us, and we will do another session next month. So we will be inviting another guest speakers for that session, and for those who wants to join in, make sure you follow our social media platforms on LinkedIn and on Facebook as well. And yeah, we will give you updates. And yeah, we have previews, topics, and recorded sessions as well available on our YouTube and on LinkedIn. So you can watch it there. It's completely free, no, not even a cent. Make You can definitely extract a lot of knowledge from this sessions. So we bid you goodbye for now. We'll be closing today's Zipinar, and we wish you safe as always. So take care, everyone. And again, thank you so much, Margie. It's a pleasure from Cogent and from Let Us Talk It team. All right. So
Bye.
let's end the webinar. Take care, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.